The night my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eyes and called me a burden, I thought my heart would break. I was sitting at my own son's dinner table listening to Amanda explain why everyone's life would be easier if I simply disappeared from it. My son Michael sat beside her, and he said nothing. I looked at the woman who had slowly pushed me out of my own family, then at my son, the little boy I had once held in my arms, and instead of crying, I smiled. Amanda smiled back, thinking she had finally won. She had no idea what that smile meant. If you've ever been made to feel like a burden by someone you loved, stay with me for this story. And if you were sitting at that table, what would you have done? If this story touches your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. And I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Leave your city and the time in the comments. Maybe Cheryl's story will remind someone tonight that being older never means being powerless. The house I thought would always be mine had once been the safest place in the world. It sat on a quiet street in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, with a wide front porch, 2 maple trees in the yard, and a small flower bed my husband Frank had built with his own hands. I had lived there for more than 30 years. I still remembered the first day we moved in. Michael was 12 years old then. He ran through every room as if we had bought him a mansion instead of a modest 3-bedroom house. "Mom, this room is mine." He had claimed the bedroom at the end of the hallway before his father and I had even finished carrying in the boxes. I laughed when I remembered it. Back then, I never imagined that one day my own son would sit at my dinner table while his wife told me I was a burden. But that night was still months away. At this point, I believed my family was simply going through a difficult season. I believed difficult seasons passed. I believed love was enough. My husband Frank had been gone for 6 years by then. Cancer took him slowly, and there were days when I still expected to hear his key turning in the front door. He had been the kind of man who whistled while making coffee in the morning and never left a room without turning off the light. After he died, the house became painfully quiet. For a while, I considered selling it. It was too much house for one person, too many memories, too many empty rooms. But every time I thought about leaving, I remembered Frank standing on the porch the day we bought it. He had put his arm around my shoulders and said, "Cheryl, one day we're going to sit right here and complain about how loud our grandchildren are." We never got to that part. Michael never had children. And eventually, the house became the place where I kept the life we had built together. I wasn't helpless. That was something I wish people had understood. At 68, I still drove myself to the grocery store. I paid my own bills. I kept track of my medications. I attended church on Sunday mornings and met my friend Linda for lunch every other Thursday. I even climbed a small stepladder every spring to clean the windows in the sunroom, although Michael had repeatedly told me I shouldn't. "I can still do things, sweetheart," I would tell him. "I know, Mom," he would answer. And he did know. At least I thought he did. Michael was 42 and worked as a sales manager for a regional equipment company. He wasn't rich, but he worked hard. He had always been ambitious. When he was younger, Frank and I had done everything we could to give him opportunities we never had. We paid for his college. We helped him buy his first car. When he and Amanda got married, we hosted the rehearsal dinner at our house. I loved Amanda then. I really did. When Michael first brought her home, she had brought me a little bouquet of yellow flowers. "I've heard so much about you." She hugged me before I even knew what to do with my hands. "You raised a wonderful man." Those words meant a lot to me, maybe too much, because I held on to them long after Amanda stopped meaning them. At first, she visited often. She would sit at my kitchen counter while I made coffee and ask about Frank. She wanted to see old photographs. She once spent an entire afternoon helping me organize a closet. I remember thinking I got lucky. I had heard so many stories about difficult daughters-in-law. Women who treated their husbands' mothers like intruders. Amanda wasn't like that, or so I thought. The change was so gradual that I didn't notice it at first. It started with little comments. One Saturday afternoon, Amanda stood in my living room looking around. "This place is beautiful," she said. I smiled. "Thank you. Frank and I put a lot of work into it." She nodded. Then she looked toward the staircase. "You must spend a fortune keeping up with all this." I laughed. "Some months it feels that way." She smiled. But there was something different in her expression, something calculating. I ignored it. A few weeks later, she came over with Michael. While I was preparing lunch, Amanda walked into the kitchen. "Cheryl, have you ever thought about downsizing?" I turned around. "Downsizing, just something smaller, easier to maintain." I dried my hands on a towel. "I've thought about it." She leaned against the counter. "You don't really need all these rooms anymore." I remember the way she said it, not cruelly, not yet, almost like she was discussing the weather. "I suppose that's true," I said. "But this house is home." Amanda smiled. "Of course." Then she asked, "Do you know how much homes around here are selling for?" I laughed. "No." "Why? Oh, no reason. I was just curious." That should have been the first warning. But I didn't see it. I saw a daughter-in-law making conversation. A month later, Amanda mentioned the house again. This time, Michael was with her. We were looking at property values in the neighborhood, she said. I looked at Michael. He shrugged. Amanda likes real estate. I smiled. Apparently. Amanda laughed. I'm just saying, Cheryl, you've got a valuable property here. There was something about the word valuable that stayed with me. Not beautiful, not special, not full of memories. Valuable. Still, I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't want to become the suspicious mother-in-law who imagined insults where none existed. So I let it go. Then came the day I fell. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't break anything. I had been carrying a basket of laundry down the stairs when my foot slipped. I grabbed the railing and landed hard on the last 2 steps. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My hip hurt, but eventually I stood. I called Michael because I knew he'd worry if he found out later. He arrived 20 minutes afterward. He looked terrified. Mom, you could have seriously hurt yourself. I know. You can't keep living alone like this. I smiled. I've lived alone for 6 years. That doesn't mean you should. Amanda arrived shortly afterward. She hugged me tightly. Oh, Cheryl, this is exactly what I've been worried about. I remember looking at her. What have you been worried about, you being here alone? She glanced around the house. Then she said something that sounded loving. Why don't you stay with us for a while? Michael immediately agreed. That might be a good idea, Mom. I hesitated. I don't want to impose. Amanda shook her head. You wouldn't be imposing. Her voice was warm. Her smile was reassuring. I'd feel better knowing you were with us. I looked at my son. He looked relieved. So I said yes. Just for a while. That was what I told myself. Just until my hip felt better. Just until Michael stopped worrying. Just until I could return to my own house. I didn't know then that saying yes would change everything. The day before I moved into Michael and Amanda's house, I stood alone in my bedroom. I opened the closet and touched Frank's old blue jacket. I looked around at the photographs on the wall, at Michael's childhood trophies, at the little wooden growth chart Frank had made for him. I whispered, I'll be back. I truly believed I would. What I didn't know was that Amanda had already prepared a room for me. Not a guest room. Not really. A room at the very end of the hallway. And she had prepared it before I had even agreed to move in. At the time, I thought that was simply proof of how thoughtful she was. I would later understand it very differently. When I arrived at Michael and Amanda's house, I told myself I was only staying for a few weeks. I had packed carefully, 2 suitcases of clothes, 1 small bag of medications, a box of photographs. And because I could never seem to leave home without it, my old recipe book. I remember standing in the guest room, though Amanda never called it that, and trying to make myself feel comfortable. The room was clean. The bed was neatly made. There was a small lamp on the nightstand and a dresser beside the window. Amanda had even placed a vase of fresh flowers on the dresser. You see, she said with a smile, I want you to feel at home. I smiled back. Thank you, Amanda. She kissed my cheek. You don't have to thank me. You're family. Those words sounded comforting, but something about the way she said them stayed with me. At the time, I couldn't explain why. Michael was different. He came into the room after Amanda left and sat on the edge of the bed. How's your hip, better? Are you sure? Yes. He nodded. I just don't want anything happening to you. I reached over and touched his hand. I know, sweetheart. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to run through my house with grass stains on his jeans. I saw the teenager who once waited outside my bedroom after his father and I had argued because he was afraid we might stop loving each other. I saw my son, and I trusted him. That trust made what happened later hurt even more. The first few days were actually pleasant. Michael left for work around 7 in the morning. Amanda worked from home several days a week, so she was usually around. She brought me coffee. She asked what I wanted for breakfast. She even offered to take me shopping. I thought perhaps I had been worrying for nothing. Maybe moving in had been a good idea. Maybe this was what family was supposed to do. Then, little things started changing. On the 4th morning, I walked into the kitchen wearing my robe. Amanda was sitting at the island with her laptop. Good morning, I said. She looked up. Morning. I poured myself coffee. Then she glanced at the mug in my hand. Do you usually drink that much coffee? I laughed. 2 cups a day. She smiled. That's a lot of caffeine at your age. I stopped. At my age? Oh, I didn't mean anything by it. She returned to her computer. I told myself not to be sensitive. Later that afternoon, I decided to make chicken soup. It was one of Frank's favorite meals. I found the ingredients and started chopping vegetables. Amanda walked into the kitchen. What are you making chicken soup? She looked into the pot. That's quite a lot. There are 4 of us. She gave a small laugh. Cheryl, there are only 3 of us. I looked at her. She smiled. Michael doesn't eat leftovers. I felt embarrassed. Oh, I can make less. No, it's fine. But it didn't feel fine. That evening, Michael came home. I told him about the soup. He smiled. Mom, I haven't had your chicken soup in years. For a moment, Amanda's expression tightened. Then she smiled. It's good. I wanted to believe her. I wanted everything to be normal. So I kept trying. I cleaned up after myself. I bought some groceries. I offered to contribute toward the electric bill. When I handed Amanda an envelope with several $100s, she stared at it. You don't have to do this. I want to. She took the envelope. Are you sure? Absolutely. She nodded. Okay. There was no thank you. I told myself it didn't matter. But I began noticing something else. Amanda started asking questions about my finances. Not casual questions. Specific ones. How much do you usually pay in property taxes? How much is your homeowner's insurance? Do you still have a mortgage? Do you have retirement savings? At first, I answered without thinking. Then, one evening, she asked, how much do you think your house is worth now? I looked at her. Why? She shrugged. I'm just curious. I really don't know. She smiled. You should find out. Why, you know, for planning purposes. I put my fork down. What kind of planning? She laughed softly. Nothing serious. You're overthinking it. I didn't respond. Michael was sitting at the other end of the table looking at his phone. He didn't seem to notice the conversation. Or perhaps he noticed and chose not to get involved. I wasn't sure which possibility hurt more. A few days later, Amanda brought home a stack of papers. She placed them on the kitchen counter. What are those? I asked. Just information. About what senior living communities? I stared at her. I told you I'm not moving into one. She immediately raised her hands. I didn't say you were. Then why do you have those? Because we're being responsible. Her tone had changed. It wasn't warm anymore. You fell down the stairs, Cheryl. I slipped. You could have broken your hip, but I didn't. That isn't the point. I looked at the brochures. There were photographs of bright dining rooms, landscaped gardens, and smiling older people sitting together. Amanda pointed to one. This place is really nice. I don't want to live there. You don't know until you see it. I know enough. She sighed. You're being stubborn. That word bothered me. I had spent my whole life being independent. Now, suddenly, independence was stubbornness. I gathered the brochures and pushed them back toward her. I appreciate your concern, but I'm going home. Amanda's face changed. Home? My house. She stared at me for a moment. Then she smiled. Of course. But there was something cold behind that smile. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the brochures, about the questions, about the house, and about the way Amanda had said, we're being responsible. The next morning I called Michael. Sweetheart, I think I'm ready to go home. There was silence on the other end. Mom, I feel much better. I know. So I'll probably head back this weekend. Another pause. Then he said, maybe you should stay a little longer. I was surprised. Why, you're safer here. I don't need someone watching me. No one's watching you. His answer came too quickly. I smiled sadly. Michael, I know you love me. I do. And I love you. I know. But I need you to understand something. What I don't want to spend the rest of my life being treated like I'm incapable of making decisions. He didn't answer. Finally, he said, I'll talk to Amanda. That sentence should have comforted me. Instead, it frightened me. Because I suddenly realized something. Michael wasn't making these decisions with me. He was discussing them with Amanda. And somehow, without my noticing, the two of them had started talking about my life as though it belonged to them. That afternoon, I went into my room to look for my purse. I opened the drawer where I had placed my important documents. My passport was there, my insurance cards were there, my bank information was there. But one folder was missing. It contained the deed information for my house and several documents Frank and I had kept together for years. I searched the closet. Nothing. I checked my suitcase. Nothing. I went through the drawers twice. Still nothing. My heart began beating faster. I walked into the hallway. Amanda was downstairs. Amanda. Yes, have you seen a blue folder? She looked up from her laptop. What blue folder? The one I brought from home. She thought for a second. No. It's important. I haven't touched your things, Cheryl. Her answer was immediate. Almost too immediate. I nodded. Okay. She turned back toward her computer. I stood there for another moment. Then I walked away. I didn't accuse her. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't make a scene. But something inside me had changed. For the first time, I stopped asking myself whether I was imagining things. I wasn't. Something was happening. And whatever it was, it had something to do with my home. The home I had spent 30 years protecting. The home Frank had built memories in. The home I had promised myself I would return to. I just didn't know yet how far Amanda was willing to go to get it. And I didn't know that before long I would hear a conversation that would finally make everything clear. The room at the end of the hallway became my world faster than I expected. At first, I tried to make peace with it. I placed Frank's photograph on the nightstand. I put my favorite sweater over the back of the chair. I arranged my medications in a small basket beside the lamp. I wanted the room to feel like mine, but it never quite did. Every time I opened the door, I was reminded that I was living inside someone else's home, and Amanda made sure I remembered it. The first few mornings, she would knock before coming in. Then she stopped knocking. One morning, I was still in bed when the door opened. Amanda stepped inside, holding a laundry basket. "Oh, you're awake." I sat up. "Yes, I need to change the sheets." I looked at the clock. It was barely 7. I can do that myself. She smiled. "I know. I just figured I'd help." She started pulling the blanket from the bed. I watched her for a moment. "Amanda, you don't have to." "I don't mind." But her voice didn't sound like someone who didn't mind. It sounded like someone who was keeping track. That afternoon, Michael came home from work. I was sitting in the living room reading when he walked through the door. "Hey, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." He kissed my forehead. "How are you feeling?" "Fine." "Hip better?" He smiled. "Good." I wanted to tell him about the folder. I almost did. But then I saw how tired he looked. He had been working long hours. I didn't want to create a fight between him and Amanda over something I couldn't prove. So I said nothing. That became my habit. I kept quiet. When Amanda complained, I stayed quiet. When she made a sharp comment, I stayed quiet. When I felt uncomfortable, I told myself it wasn't worth causing trouble. But silence has a strange way of making people bolder. A week later, Amanda stood in the kitchen while I was preparing lunch. "Cheryl, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How much are you spending on groceries at your house?" I looked at her. "At my house?" "Yes." "I don't know exactly." She opened the refrigerator. "You used to shop for 2 people, right? Frank and I did. But now it's just you." "Yes." She closed the refrigerator. "You probably don't realize how expensive it is to maintain a house for one person." I put the knife down. "I've managed so far." "I know." She smiled. "I'm just saying things are different now." Different. That word came up often. Different because I was older. Different because Frank was gone. Different because I lived alone. Different because I had fallen once. Every difference seemed to become another reason why someone else should make decisions for me. A few days later, I offered to help with household expenses. I had already decided I would not live under Michael and Amanda's roof without contributing. So I wrote a check. When I handed it to Amanda, she looked surprised. "This is a lot. It covers groceries and some of the utilities. You don't have to. I want to." She looked at the check again. "Okay." She put it on the counter. Then she said, "This will help." Something about those words bothered me, not because I minded helping. I didn't. But because she hadn't said thank you. She had said it would help, as if I were already an expense that needed to be managed. That evening, Michael came home. He asked about dinner. I told him I had given Amanda money for the household. He frowned. "Mom, you don't have to do that." "I know. You're family." "I know." He smiled, but Amanda didn't say anything. She kept eating. I looked at my son. For a second, I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say, "Michael, something isn't right," but I couldn't find the courage. Not yet. Then the questions about my finances became more frequent. One afternoon, Amanda sat beside me on the couch. "Have you updated your will recently?" I nearly dropped my cup. "My will?" "Yes." "Why would you ask that?" She shrugged. "Everyone should have an updated will. I have one." "When did you make it?" "Several years ago." "You should probably review it. I've thought about it." She nodded. "And your bank accounts?" I looked at her. "What about them?" "Do you have someone listed as a beneficiary?" "Yes." "Michael." I didn't answer. She smiled. "You don't have to tell me." I wasn't planning to. Her expression changed for only a second. Then she laughed. "I'm just trying to make sure you're protected." I remembered Frank. Before he died, he and I had spent weeks organizing our documents. He had always told me, "Never leave important things scattered around Cheryl. If something happens, make sure everything is clear." I had followed his advice. Every important document had a place. That was why the missing blue folder bothered me so much. I knew exactly where I'd put it. I knew I hadn't taken it home by accident. And I knew I hadn't given it to anyone. 2 days later, I asked Amanda again, "Are you absolutely sure you haven't seen my blue folder?" She looked annoyed. "I told you no. It has some important documents. You should be more careful with your things." I stared at her. "I am careful." She sighed. "I'm not trying to argue. Neither am I." She stood. "Maybe you left it at your house. I checked. Well, then I don't know what to tell you." She walked away. I watched her disappear around the corner. Something in me wanted to follow her. Instead, I stayed where I was. That night, I called Michael. "Can you come home a little early tomorrow?" "Why, I want to talk to you." He paused. "Is something wrong? I don't know yet." That answer made him nervous. "I'll be home by 6. "Okay." The next evening, Michael arrived at 6:15. I walked into the living room and saw me sitting there with the folder from my other documents in my lap. "What happened?" I looked at him. "Something is missing." "What, a blue folder from my house?" He frowned. "What was in it?" "Documents related to the house." Michael became quiet. "Mom, are you sure you didn't put it somewhere else? I've checked." He sat down. "Maybe Amanda moved it when she helped you pack." I looked at him. "That is what I was wondering." I didn't say anything. Then Amanda walked into the room. "What are you two talking about?" Michael answered. "Mom can't find some documents." Amanda looked at me. "I already told her I don't know anything about it." "I know I said." She crossed her arms. "Then why are we still talking about it?" Michael looked between us. "Let's not make this bigger than it is." I felt something inside me sink. He wasn't asking questions. He was asking us to stop. I looked at my son. "Michael, if you lost something important, wouldn't you want to know where it went?" "Of course. Then you understand." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Cheryl, nobody is trying to take anything from you." The words came so quickly that I noticed them immediately. Take anything from you. I hadn't said anyone was trying to take anything. I had only said a folder was missing. I looked at her. She looked back. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Michael stood. "I'm tired. Can we deal with this tomorrow?" I nodded. "Of course." He walked upstairs. Amanda followed him. I remained alone in the living room. The house was quiet. I could hear their footsteps above me. Then I heard a door close. I sat there for a long time. I thought about the missing folder. I thought about Amanda's questions. I thought about the brochures for senior living. And I thought about the way Michael had asked me to stop making things bigger than they were. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was becoming suspicious because I was scared. Maybe I was letting one missing folder turn into something it wasn't. I wanted to believe that. I truly did. But then sometime after midnight, I woke up thirsty. I opened my bedroom door. The hallway was dark. As I walked toward the stairs, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Amanda's voice. And Michael's. I stopped. I couldn't hear every word, so I moved closer. Then I heard Amanda say something that made me freeze. "We can't keep doing this with her forever." I stood completely still. My hand tightened around the railing. Then Michael said quietly, "I know." And for the first time, I realized that the conversation I had been afraid of wasn't coming someday. It had already begun. I stayed frozen in the hallway. For several seconds, I wasn't even sure I was breathing. Amanda's voice had been clear. "We can't keep doing this with her forever." And Michael had answered, "I know." 2 words. That's all it took to make my heart ache. I stepped backward before either of them could see me. The floor creaked beneath my foot. I held my breath. Neither of them came upstairs. I returned to my room, closed the door quietly, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. I stared at Frank's photograph on the nightstand. For years, whenever something frightened me, I had talked to him. Sometimes I talked out loud. Sometimes I only looked at his picture. That night, I whispered, "Frank, what am I supposed to do?" Of course there was no answer. There was only the silence of a room that wasn't really mine. I lay down, but sleep never came. I kept replaying those words. We can't keep doing this with her forever. What did Amanda mean? What exactly were they planning to do? And why had Michael said, "I know"? The next morning, I behaved as though nothing had happened. I went downstairs at 7. Amanda was already in the kitchen. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning." She handed me a cup of coffee. "I made it the way you like it." I looked at the cup. "Thank you." She smiled. "You sleep okay?" "Very well." It was a lie. She didn't know that. Or maybe she did. Amanda had become very good at making ordinary questions sound innocent. Michael came into the kitchen a few minutes later. "Morning, Mom." "Morning, sweetheart." He kissed my cheek. I studied his face. He looked tired. Normal. Like the son I had always known. I wanted to ask him what he had meant the night before. I wanted to say, "I heard you." But something stopped me. I realized that if I confronted him immediately, he might defend Amanda. Or worse, he might lie. I needed to know the truth before I spoke. So I stayed quiet. After breakfast, Amanda left to run errands. Michael was getting ready for work when I finally said, "Can I ask you something?" He turned around. "Sure. Do you think I should stay here much longer?" He looked surprised. "Why are you asking? I just want to know what you think." He hesitated. "I think it's safer for you here." I smiled faintly. "Safer? You fell down, Mom." "One time." "I know. I've lived alone for 6 years. I know. He rubbed his forehead. Mom, this isn't about taking your independence away. Then what is it about? He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, we just need to figure out what's best. The phrase sounded familiar. What's best? Amanda had used it. I nodded. Okay. He looked relieved. I'll call you later. Drive carefully. He kissed my forehead and left. I stood by the window and watched his car disappear down the street. I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not anger. Not exactly. It was disappointment. The kind that settles quietly inside you. The kind that makes you realize the person you trusted may not be seeing what you see. That afternoon, Amanda returned carrying a folder. She placed it on the kitchen counter. Cheryl, I found something you might want to look at. I walked over. What is it? She opened the folder. Inside were brochures from several senior living communities, the same kind I had seen before. I looked at her. I told you I'm not interested. You haven't even visited them. I don't need to. She sighed. Why are you making this so difficult? I don't think I'm making anything difficult. You fell down. I recovered. You're alone. I've been alone since Frank died. You don't understand. I stared at her. What don't I understand? She paused, then she softened her voice. We're trying to help you. I almost laughed. Help me do what make a responsible decision. I looked at the brochures again. One had a monthly price printed on it. It was expensive. Very expensive. Who chose these places? Amanda looked at me. I did. Why? Because I care about you. I nodded slowly. Then why do I feel like you're trying to get rid of me? Her face hardened. I never said that. You don't have to. She closed the folder. I don't know what you want from us. I want my life to remain mine. She stared at me. Then she said something that I would never forget. Your life isn't just about you anymore. I felt as though someone had slapped me. What does that mean? It means your decisions affect Michael. I know. Then you should think about him. I always have. She walked away. I remained standing in the kitchen. My hands were cold. I didn't understand how a conversation about safety had turned into an argument about my right to make decisions. That evening, Michael came home. Amanda spoke to him privately. I could hear their voices from upstairs. I couldn't make out the words. Then the voices became louder. Amanda said, She doesn't understand how serious this is. Michael answered, I know. Again, that phrase. I know. I sat on the edge of my bed. I suddenly felt like a stranger in my own family. A few minutes later, Michael knocked on my door. Mom, come in. He entered. Amanda wasn't with him. He sat beside me. I wanted to check on you. I'm fine. He looked at me. Are you sure? Yes. He hesitated. Mom, Amanda and I have been talking. My heart tightened. About me. Yes. I waited. He looked uncomfortable. We think you need more support. I have support. I mean professional support. I stared at him. What kind? He looked down. Someone who can help manage things. What things? Your finances, your house, medical stuff. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My finances? Just temporarily. Why? Because we don't want you to have to deal with everything yourself. I looked at my son. Michael, have I ever failed to pay a bill? No. Have I ever forgotten where my money is? No. Have I ever asked you to manage my finances? No. Then why do you think I need someone to do it? He didn't answer. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Did Amanda tell you I couldn't manage my own affairs? It's not like that. Then what is it like? He stood. Mom, I don't want to fight. Neither do I. Let's talk tomorrow. He walked toward the door. Before he left, I said, Michael. He stopped. If something happens to me, I want you to remember something. He turned. I raised you to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. His eyes filled with emotion. I know. Then don't let anyone convince you that I can't protect myself. He looked at me for several seconds. Then he quietly left. I sat alone. The tears finally came. Not because I was afraid of losing my house. Not because I was afraid of growing older. I cried because my son had begun looking at me as a problem that needed to be solved. That night, I opened the drawer beside my bed and took out my wallet. Inside was an old photograph of Michael at 17. He was standing beside Frank in the backyard. Both of them were covered in dirt because they had spent the afternoon planting a tree. I remembered Michael's words that day. Dad, when I get old, I'm going to take care of you. Frank had laughed. You better. I held that photograph against my chest. Then I remembered the missing blue folder. I remembered Amanda's questions, her brochures, her insistence that I needed someone to manage my finances. And suddenly, the pieces began connecting. Maybe the missing folder wasn't an accident. Maybe the questions weren't innocent. Maybe Amanda wasn't simply worried about me. I couldn't prove any of it. Not yet. But I knew one thing. I could no longer afford to dismiss my instincts. The next morning I called my friend Linda. I didn't tell her everything. I simply said I need the name of a good lawyer. She was silent for a moment. Then she gave me a name. Robert Hayes? I recognized it immediately. Robert had known Frank. He had helped us with paperwork years ago. I stared at his number for almost 10 minutes before calling. When he answered, I said, "Robert, this is Cheryl Perry." There was a pause. Then his voice softened. "Cheryl, how have you been?" I looked around the room at the unfamiliar walls. "I need your help." His tone changed immediately. "What's happened?" I took a deep breath. "I think someone is trying to make decisions about my life without telling me." Robert didn't interrupt. I continued. "And I think it may have something to do with my house." There was silence on the line. Then he said quietly, "Cheryl, bring every document you have." I swallowed. "Why?" "Because before you confront anyone, we need to know exactly where you stand." For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. I felt a small spark of control returning to me. I didn't know yet what Robert would find, but I knew I was done pretending everything was fine. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I had barely slept, but for the first time in weeks, my mind felt clear. Fear was still there. So was the hurt. But underneath both was something stronger: determination. I got dressed quietly and sat at the small desk in my room. I opened the drawer where I kept the documents I had managed to gather: my bank statements, my insurance information, my tax records, the paperwork from my house, and the few documents I had brought with me when I moved into Michael and Amanda's home. I looked through everything twice. The blue folder was still missing. That bothered me more than anything. I had always been organized. Frank used to joke that I could find a receipt from 20 years ago if someone gave me 10 minutes. He wasn't wrong. So when something important disappeared, I noticed. At 8:30, I called Robert Hayes. He answered on the second ring. "Cheryl, yes. Are you still coming?" "I am." "Good. Bring whatever you have." "I will." He paused. "Cheryl, before you come, I want you to understand something." "What?" "Don't confront anyone yet." I looked toward the closed bedroom door. I wasn't planning to. "Good. Let me look at the documents first." I promised him I would. Then I put everything into a canvas bag. Before leaving, I walked downstairs. Michael was already gone. Amanda stood in the kitchen pouring coffee. "You're up early," she said. "I have an appointment." "With who?" "A lawyer." Her hand stopped. "Just for a second." Then she smiled. "A lawyer?" "Yes." "Why?" "I have some paperwork to review." She stared at me. "Is something wrong?" "No." "Then why do you need a lawyer?" I picked up my bag. "Because I have some things I want to understand." Her expression became unreadable. "Does Michael know I haven't told him yet?" She nodded slowly. "I think you should." "I probably will." She looked away. "Okay." I walked toward the front door. Behind me, she said, "Cheryl," I turned. "You know you can talk to us before making decisions." I smiled politely. "I know." Then I left. The drive to Robert's office took about 25 minutes. His office was in an older brick building downtown. I had been there once with Frank many years earlier. Walking through the front door brought back memories I hadn't expected. Frank had trusted Robert. That mattered to me. When Robert saw me, he stood immediately. "Cheryl." He hugged me. For a moment, I nearly cried. It had been a long time since someone had looked at me without seeing a problem that needed fixing. We sat in his office. He pointed to the canvas bag. "Let's see what you've got." I placed the documents on his desk. He went through them slowly. He asked questions. I answered. He asked when I had moved into Michael and Amanda's house. I told him. He asked about the fall. I explained exactly what had happened. He asked about the senior living brochures. I told him. Then I told him about Amanda's questions. The house, my savings, my will, my beneficiaries, the person who might manage my finances. Robert stopped writing. "Has anyone actually asked you to sign anything?" "No." "Have you signed anything recently?" "No." "Has anyone taken you to a bank or financial institution?" "No." "Has anyone asked you to give them access to your accounts?" I hesitated. "Amanda has asked questions, but no formal request." "No." Robert nodded. Then he asked, "What about the missing documents?" I told him exactly what had happened. He leaned back. "That's concerning. Do you think she took them? I don't know. Could she sell my house not simply because she has information about it?" I exhaled. Robert continued. "Cheryl, based on what you've shown me, the house is still yours." I stared at him. "You're sure?" "Yes." "Michael doesn't own it?" "No." "Amanda, no. They can't sell it. Not without your authority." I felt my shoulders relax. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe normally. Robert folded his hands. "But there's something else we need to discuss." My relief disappeared. "What?" He spoke carefully. If someone is trying to convince others that you are no longer capable of managing your own affairs, that can become a serious problem. I stared at him. Why would anyone say that I don't know? But Amanda has said I need help. Help with what, my finances? Robert's expression changed. Has she said you're confused, forgetful, unable to make decisions not directly? Has she described your fall as evidence that you can't live alone? Yes. He nodded. That may be important. I swallowed. She thinks I'm incapable. I can't tell you what she thinks. I'm telling you what you need to watch for. I explained that if people began creating a story that I couldn't manage my own affairs, that story could eventually be used to pressure me into giving someone authority over my decisions. I felt cold. So what should I do? First, stay calm. I almost laughed. That's becoming difficult. I understand. He gave me a reassuring smile. Second, keep your documents secure. I nodded. Third document, anything unusual. Everything, anything that concerns you. He paused. And don't accuse anyone without evidence. I won't. Good. I looked at him. Robert, am I overreacting? He was quiet for a moment. No. That single word meant more than he probably realized. He continued. You're not wrong to protect yourself. I looked down at my hands. For weeks I had wondered whether I was becoming paranoid. Now I knew I wasn't imagining the changes. Something was happening. I just didn't know how far it had gone. Before I left, Robert gave me copies of several documents and told me where I should keep the originals. He also told me to make sure my financial and legal records were under my own control. I thanked him. At the door, I stopped. Robert. Yes, if this turns out to be nothing, then you'll have lost nothing by being careful. I nodded. That was exactly what I needed to hear. On the drive back, I didn't call Michael. I didn't call Amanda. I needed time to think. When I returned to the house, Amanda was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked up. How did it go? Fine. What did the lawyer say? I put my bag down. He said I should keep my paperwork organized. She smiled. That makes sense. I watched her carefully. Does it? Of course. She returned to her coffee. I could feel her watching me from the corner of her eye. Then she said, Cheryl, Michael and I have been talking. My stomach tightened. About what? About your future. I didn't answer. She continued. We really think you need more support. I understand. And we want to make sure you're safe. I appreciate that. She seemed surprised by my calm response. Then she smiled. Maybe you should let Michael help you with some of your finances. I looked directly at her. Why? Because he's your son. That doesn't answer my question. She sighed. You're making this complicated. No, I'm asking a simple question. She leaned back. Because things are easier when family handles them together. I nodded slowly. Maybe. She seemed satisfied. Then I said, I'll think about it. Amanda smiled. That's all I'm asking. I picked up my bag and went upstairs. Once I closed my bedroom door, I sat on the bed. I thought about Robert's warning. Don't confront anyone. So I wouldn't. Not yet. Instead, I would watch. I would listen. And I would protect what was mine. That evening, Michael came home later than usual. He knocked on my door. Mom, come in. He sat down. How was your appointment? I looked at him. Amanda told you? Yes. Then you already know. He looked uncomfortable. Mom, you should have told me. Would you have listened? His face fell. I always listened to you. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Michael, I don't want to fight with you. Neither do I. I just need you to understand that I'm capable of making my own decisions. I know. Do you? He looked down. Yes. But there was uncertainty in his voice. I reached for his hand. I'm your mother. I will always love you. I love you too. But loving me doesn't mean deciding everything for me. He nodded. I understand. I hoped he did. After he left, I locked my bedroom door. Then I opened my bag and looked at the documents Robert had returned to me. For the first time, I felt prepared. Not safe. Not yet. But prepared. And that distinction mattered. Because I had finally understood something I should have recognized sooner. Amanda wasn't asking questions because she was curious. She was asking because she wanted information. Information about my money. Information about my house. Information about my future. And if I was right about that, then I needed to know what she planned to do next. I had no intention of confronting her. I had no intention of fighting with Michael. Instead, I would let them believe I was still confused, still frightened, still uncertain. Because sometimes the safest way to discover someone's intentions is to let them think you don't know what they're doing. And I had a feeling Amanda was about to reveal far more than she realized. For the next few days, I became very careful about what I said. I didn't become cold. I didn't become distant. And I certainly didn't let Amanda know how much I had learned. Instead, I did something that felt completely unnatural to me. I pretended everything was fine. At breakfast, I smiled. When Amanda asked whether I had slept well, I said yes. When Michael asked how my hip felt, I told him it was getting better. When Amanda mentioned senior living again, I simply listened. I had spent my entire life believing honesty was the foundation of a family. Now I was learning that sometimes silence was the only way to protect yourself from people who had stopped being honest with you. One morning, Amanda walked into the kitchen holding a cup of coffee. I was thinking, she said, maybe you should let Michael take over some of your paperwork. I looked up from my toast. What paperwork? Bills? Insurance? Things like that. I've always handled those myself. I know. She sat across from me. But there's no reason you have to anymore. I smiled. Maybe you're right. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. You think so? I said maybe. She laughed. I'm glad you're finally seeing things differently. I lowered my eyes. Inside, my heart was beating hard, but I kept my voice calm. I've been thinking a lot. Amanda reached across the table. We just want what's best for you. I nodded. I know. She smiled. That was exactly what I wanted her to believe, that I was beginning to surrender, that I was tired, that I was confused, that I was ready to let someone else take control. What Amanda didn't know was that Robert had asked me to meet him again. This time, I brought every document I could safely gather. I waited until Michael and Amanda were both out of the house. Then I drove downtown. Robert was standing by the window when I entered his office. You look different, he said. How calmer? I smiled. I've decided to stop reacting. He nodded. Good. I placed my documents on his desk. I need to know exactly what they can and cannot do. Robert opened the first folder. Let's start with the house. He reviewed the ownership records again. This is clear, Cheryl. The property belongs to you. And Michael, he has no ownership interest based on these documents. Amanda, neither does she. I nodded. What about selling it? You decide whether it gets sold. And if I say no, then it doesn't get sold. I closed my eyes briefly. That simple answer gave me an enormous sense of relief. For weeks, I had felt as though my own home was slowly slipping out of my hands. Now I understood that fear had been stronger than reality. But Robert wasn't finished. There is something I want you to take seriously. I opened my eyes. What? The idea that you are incapable of managing your affairs. I felt a chill. Why? Because you've mentioned that your daughter-in-law keeps telling you that you need help. Yes. And your son has started saying the same thing. Yes. Robert leaned forward. Has anyone asked you to sign a document giving them authority over your finances? Not directly. Has anyone asked you to sign anything concerning your house? No. Has anyone said you are confused or forgetful? I thought carefully. Amanda has said I don't understand how serious my situation is. Anything else? She says I shouldn't be making decisions alone. Robert nodded. That's important. I stared at him. What exactly are they trying to establish? I can't say what their intentions are without evidence. He paused. But if people repeatedly tell others that an older person is unable to manage their own affairs, that can become a narrative. A narrative. A story people start believing? I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Robert continued. That's why you need to be careful. Don't give anyone a reason to say you are confused, unstable, or unable to understand your decisions. I almost laughed. I've never been confused about my own life. I know. But what if they tell people I am? Then documentation matters. He handed me a notebook. Write down important conversations, dates, what was said, who was present. I took it. Everything, anything that concerns you. I nodded. Then I remembered something. Robert, there was another thing. What, the folder? The missing blue folder. Yes. Has it turned up? No. Did you ask Michael? Yes. What did he say? He thought Amanda might have moved it while helping me pack. Robert's expression tightened. Did Amanda admit touching it? No. Did Michael search for it? Not that I know of. Robert was quiet. Then he said, Keep looking, but don't accuse anyone. I won't. I hesitated. There is something else. What Amanda has been asking about my will. Robert looked directly at me. What did she ask when I last updated it? Who my beneficiaries are? Whether Michael is listed? Did you answer some of it? Don't answer any more questions about your finances. I understand. He gathered the papers. Cheryl, I want you to remember something. What you don't have to prove that someone is trying to hurt you before you protect yourself. I looked at him. That sentence stayed with me because I had spent weeks feeling guilty for being cautious. I thought protecting myself meant I was accusing my family. Robert made me understand the difference. Protection wasn't accusation. It was preparation. Before I left, he made one final recommendation. Keep control of your original documents. I will. And if anyone asks you to sign something, don't sign it immediately. I won't. Bring it to me first. I promised him I would. On the drive home, I thought about Michael. I didn't want to believe he was part of some plan against me. He was my son, my only child. I had spent 42 years loving him. Maybe Amanda was influencing him. Maybe he was frightened about money. Maybe he was simply trying to keep peace in his marriage. I wanted to believe there was an explanation that didn't require me to see him as an enemy. When I arrived home, Michael was sitting at the kitchen table. He looked up. "Where were you?" "I had an appointment." "With Robert," I stopped. "How did you know Amanda mentioned it?" I set my purse down. "I did see him." Michael looked uneasy. "Mom, why didn't you tell me? I didn't think I needed permission. I didn't mean it like that." "I know." He rubbed his hands together. "What did you talk about? Paperwork? About the house?" "Yes." He looked down. "Mom, what?" He hesitated. "Amanda and I have been trying to figure out what to do." I remained silent. What to do about what he looked at me? Your situation. My situation, you living alone. The house. Your finances. I watched him carefully. "Why are my finances part of your concern?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Because we're family." I smiled. "I know." There was something in his face that bothered me. Not guilt. Not exactly. Confusion. As though he had been told one thing and was beginning to suspect another. I decided not to push. "Michael, I don't want you to worry about me. I do worry about you." "I know. I just don't want anything happening. Neither do I." He nodded. Then he reached into his briefcase. "I brought something home." He pulled out a folder. My heart skipped. For one terrible second, I thought it might be the missing blue folder. But it wasn't. It contained information about the house. Property estimates, mortgage information, a few printed pages. I stared at him. "Why do you have these?" He looked uncomfortable. "Amanda asked me to look into some things." "What things? The value of the property?" I said nothing. He continued. "She thought we should understand our options." "Our options?" He realized what he had said. "I mean your options." I looked at the papers. I didn't touch them. "Michael, did you ask her why she needed this information?" "She said she was trying to help." "And you believed her?" He looked at me. "I wanted to." That answer broke my heart. Not because he was defending Amanda. Because he wasn't sure anymore. I could see it. For the first time, doubt had entered his eyes. I stood. "Michael, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't sign anything concerning my house or my finances without talking to me first." He looked surprised. "I wouldn't." "Promise me." He nodded. "I promise." After he left, I sat alone at the kitchen table. I thought about the folder he had brought home. Amanda had been gathering information. Michael had been gathering information. And neither of them had asked me directly what I wanted. That was the part I couldn't understand. How had my life become a problem everyone was discussing except me? That night, I made a decision. I would stop trying to convince them that I was capable. I would stop defending every decision. I would simply continue living carefully and let their own actions reveal the truth. If Amanda truly wanted to help me, there would be nothing to fear. If she wanted something else eventually, she would show it, and I would be ready. I didn't know how long I would have to wait, but I had already learned something important. The person who thinks you are powerless often becomes careless, and careless people leave evidence behind. So I smiled. Not because I was happy. Not because I had forgiven Amanda. Not because I had forgotten what Michael had allowed to happen. I smiled because, for the first time, I knew I didn't have to fight blindly. I had the truth on my side. Now I only needed to be patient enough to let the truth speak. For the first time since moving into Michael and Amanda's house, I stopped trying to make myself smaller. I didn't become rude. I didn't slam doors or demand explanations. I simply stopped apologizing for existing. That change was subtle, but Amanda noticed it. She noticed everything. The following morning, I came downstairs before she did. I made my own breakfast, washed my own dishes, and sat by the kitchen window with a cup of coffee. When Amanda finally walked in, she stopped. "Oh, you're already up. I've been awake for a while." She looked at the clean counter. "Did you make breakfast?" "Yes." "You didn't have to." "I know." She studied me. Then she smiled. "That's good." I smiled back. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Michael told me you spoke to Robert again." I looked at her. "He did?" "Yes." I took another sip of coffee. "He mentioned it." Amanda pulled out a chair. "Cheryl, I hope you understand that we're not trying to take anything away from you. I understand. We're just concerned." "I know. You've been acting differently lately." I lowered my cup. "How more guarded?" I smiled gently. "Maybe I'm just thinking more carefully." She didn't like that answer. I could see it in her eyes. She leaned back. "You know, sometimes being suspicious of people who love you can create problems that aren't really there." I nodded. "That may be true." She seemed surprised that I agreed. Then I added, "That's why I don't want to make accusations without knowing the facts." Her smile disappeared for half a second. "I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say you did." She looked away. That was the first time I realized something important. Amanda was nervous. Not frightened. Not yet. But nervous. And nervous people sometimes make mistakes. That afternoon, I went through my belongings again. I searched every drawer, every suitcase, every box. I checked the pockets of my old coats. Nothing. The blue folder was still gone. I called Robert. "I haven't found it." "Don't panic. I'm not panicking." "Good. I just don't understand where it went." "Then don't focus on the folder alone. Focus on what happens next." I knew what he meant. Watch. Listen. Document. So I did. I started keeping my notebook in a small locked compartment inside my suitcase. Every evening I wrote down anything unusual. The date. The time. What was said. Who was present. At first I felt foolish. I had never imagined I would need to keep records of conversations with my own family. But after everything that had happened, I no longer trusted my memory of events to be enough. 3 days later, something happened that changed everything. I was sitting in the living room when Amanda came downstairs carrying a stack of mail. She separated the envelopes on the kitchen counter. Then she stopped. "Cheryl, yes. Do you still receive mail at your house?" "Most of it." "Why? Because that's where my address is." She looked at me. "You should probably change that." "Why? So everything comes here." "I don't want that." She frowned. "It would be easier." "For whom? For everyone." I smiled. "I think I'll leave it as it is." She gathered the envelopes. "You're making everything harder than it needs to be." "I've heard that before." She walked away. I watched her carefully. Later that afternoon, Michael came home. He seemed distracted. He barely touched dinner. Finally, I asked, "Is everything okay?" "Yeah. You don't look okay." He sighed. "Work is stressful." I didn't push. After dinner, he helped me carry a basket of laundry upstairs. As we reached the hallway, he stopped. "Mom." "Yes, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Did you change your will?" I felt my stomach tighten. "No." "Are you planning to?" "Why?" He hesitated. "Amanda thinks you might." I looked at him. "What exactly did she say?" "She said you should make sure everything is updated." "That sounds reasonable." "She also thinks you should consider putting someone you trust in charge if something happens." I stared at him. "Someone you trust?" "Yes." "Who did she have in mind?" He didn't answer. "Michael." He looked uncomfortable. "I don't know." I knew he was lying, not maliciously, but he was hiding something. I touched his arm. "You can tell me." He looked down. "She thinks I should be added to some of your accounts." I felt a wave of sadness. "Does she?" "Yes." "Do you want that?" He didn't answer. "Michael." I don't know. That hurt more than I expected. I had spent my life teaching him to make difficult decisions. Now he was standing in front of me, unable to tell me whether he wanted access to his mother's money. I said quietly, "You don't need to answer that tonight." He looked at me. "Mom, I'm not trying to take anything from you." "I know. I swear. I believe you." And I did. At least I wanted to. He hugged me. I closed my eyes. For one brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe this could still be repaired. Maybe Michael was simply confused. Maybe Amanda was pushing him. Maybe there was still a way back. Then I noticed something. As Michael pulled away, his eyes moved toward the hallway. He looked nervous. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing." He walked downstairs. I stayed there. Something had changed. I could feel it. That evening after everyone went to bed, I heard footsteps outside my room. They stopped. I didn't move. A few seconds later, I heard the handle turn. The door was locked. There was silence. Then the footsteps disappeared. I sat up in bed. My heart was pounding. I didn't open the door. Instead, I waited. A minute passed. Then 5. Finally, I heard Amanda's bedroom door close. I got out of bed. I opened my suitcase and checked the documents. Everything was still there. I locked it again. The next morning, I said nothing. But I began paying closer attention. Amanda started asking where I kept things. My checkbook, my insurance information, my tax records, my house keys. Every question sounded casual. Together, they were not casual at all. One afternoon, she walked into my room without knocking. "Are you looking for something?" "No." She glanced at my suitcase. "What do you keep in there, clothes?" She smiled. "Just clothes," I smiled back. "Mostly." She left. I waited until I heard her footsteps disappear. Then I opened the suitcase. Nothing had been disturbed, but I knew she had been looking. That evening, Linda called me. I had told her only a little about what was happening. She asked, "How are things?" I hesitated. "Complicated." "Do you want me to come over?" I smiled. You'd have to drive all the way across town. I've driven farther for less. Her voice made me laugh for the first time in days. I'm okay. Are you sure? No. She went quiet. Then she said, Cheryl, you don't have to protect everyone else's feelings at the expense of your own. I closed my eyes. That sentence went straight through me. I know. Do you? I smiled sadly. I'm learning. After we hung up, I sat by the window. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. A child was riding a bicycle down the sidewalk. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. A woman was bringing groceries from her car. Everything looked normal. But my life didn't feel normal anymore. I had spent weeks trying to understand what Amanda wanted. Now I was beginning to understand something else. It wasn't just about the house. The house was valuable, yes, but there was something more important. Control. Amanda wanted control over my decisions, and perhaps she believed that once Michael agreed with her, I would have no choice. She had made one mistake, though. She assumed I was afraid to stand up for myself. She didn't know the woman I had become after losing Frank. Grief had taught me how to survive. Raising Michael had taught me patience. And years of managing a household alone had taught me something Amanda had clearly forgotten. I knew how to handle difficult situations. I simply hadn't expected the difficult situation to be my own family. The following morning, I received a phone call from Robert. His voice was serious. Cheryl, I need you to come to my office. Why? I found something in the records. My heart stopped. What did you find? I don't want to discuss it over the phone. I stood slowly. Is it about my house? Yes. My hand tightened around the phone. Is something wrong? Not with the ownership. I exhaled. Then what? Robert paused. There's an application that was started recently. An application for what another pause. Then he said, that's what I need to show you. I looked toward the hallway. Amanda was standing there. She hadn't said a word, but from the expression on her face, I knew she had heard enough. And suddenly, I understood why she had been so nervous. She knew something was coming. And for the first time, I wondered whether the missing blue folder had never been the real danger. It may have only been the beginning. I barely slept that night. The little brass key sat on my nightstand, catching the faint light from the lamp. I kept staring at it. I knew that key belonged to something Frank had considered important enough to lock away. But what and why had I suddenly remembered it now? The next morning, I made a decision. I was going back to my house. I didn't tell Amanda. I didn't tell Michael. I simply waited until after breakfast, picked up my purse, and said, I'm going to get a few more things. Amanda looked up from her phone. Again, yes. What do you need? Some clothes? You can tell me. I'll get them for you. I smiled. I'd rather go myself. She studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, I drove alone. The entire way I kept thinking about the key. When I reached my house, I parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a moment. I felt strangely nervous. This was ridiculous. It was my house, my property, my memories. Yet I felt like I was sneaking into somewhere I no longer belonged. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was overwhelming. I walked through the living room slowly. I touched Frank's chair. Then I looked at the family photographs. One showed Michael at 10 years old, missing his 2 front teeth. Another showed Frank and me standing on the porch the year we bought the house. I smiled sadly. I wish you were here, I whispered. Then I went upstairs. I entered our old bedroom. The room hadn't changed. Frank's side of the closet was still mostly empty. His old watch sat inside a small wooden box on the dresser. I opened it. The watch was still there. I touched the glass. Then I remembered the key. I walked to the closet and searched through the shelves. There was an old storage box on the top shelf. I pulled it down. Inside were Christmas decorations, old tax documents, photographs, and several envelopes. Nothing. I searched again. Then I remembered something. Frank had always hated keeping important documents in obvious places. He once told me, if you hide something where everyone looks, you haven't hidden it at all. I smiled at the memory. Then I looked around the room. Where would Frank have hidden something? My eyes landed on the old wooden chest at the foot of the bed. I hadn't opened it in years. I lifted the lid. Inside were blankets, winter coats, and an old quilt. At the very bottom was a small metal box. My heart began pounding. I pulled it out. It was exactly the kind of box Frank used to keep important things. And the little brass key fit the lock. I stood there for several seconds before turning it. Click. The lid opened. Inside were documents, several envelopes, a small notebook, and a photograph of Frank and me from our first year of marriage. I picked up the photograph first. On the back, Frank had written, "For Cheryl, so she never forgets where we started." My eyes filled with tears. I held the photograph against my chest. Then I looked at the documents. There were old investment records, insurance papers, a copy of our original mortgage, and one envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter from Frank. I sat on the edge of the bed and began reading. He had written it several years before his death. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was something else. Frank had always been practical. He wrote that he wanted to make sure I would be protected if he died before me. He explained that he had arranged our finances so that the house would remain mine. He had also created a separate investment account for me, an account I had almost forgotten about. I stared at the final page. There was a balance listed. My breath caught. It was considerably larger than I remembered. I had known about the account, but after Frank died, I had focused on surviving rather than managing every detail of our finances. The money had continued to grow, and according to the documents, it was entirely under my control. I sat very still. Then I understood something. Amanda had been asking about my finances. She had been asking about my house. But she didn't know everything. She didn't know about this account. And she certainly didn't know about the documents in this box. I carefully placed everything back, except one document. I took a photocopy of the account statement and put it into my purse. Then I found another envelope. This one contained the original property documents. I checked the names. Mine. Only mine. There was no Michael, no Amanda, no one else. I smiled, not because I wanted to defeat them, but because Frank had quietly protected me long before I ever knew I would need protection. Then I noticed something else. The notebook. I opened it. The first pages contained notes in Frank's handwriting. Dates, names, financial information. And toward the back there was a section titled Future Planning. I read the first few lines. Frank had written about Michael. He had wanted our son to have a secure future. But he had also written something that made me stop. Michael should never feel entitled to what we worked for. Help him when he needs it, but make sure Cheryl always has enough to live independently. I closed my eyes. Tears rolled down my cheeks. That was Frank. Even in death, he was thinking about me. I sat there for a long time. Then I heard something. A car outside. I quickly closed the box. I went downstairs and looked through the window. A familiar car was parked across the street. Amanda's car. My heart started racing. Why was she here? I stepped away from the window. The front door remained locked. A minute later, I saw Amanda get out of her car. She looked toward my house. Then she walked to the front door. I didn't move. She knocked. I stayed silent. She knocked again. Cheryl. I held my breath. She tried the handle. Locked. Then she pulled out her phone. I watched her from behind the curtain. She made a call. I couldn't hear what she said. Then she walked around the side of the house. My heart pounded. I moved away from the window. She stopped near the side entrance. Then I heard the faint sound of a key. My blood went cold. She had a key. I didn't know she had one. The door opened. Amanda stepped inside. I stood frozen in the hallway. She called out, "Cheryl." I didn't answer. She walked toward the kitchen, then the living room. She looked around. I watched her from the staircase. She wasn't behaving like someone who had come to check on me. She was searching. She went straight toward the hallway where my office was located. I felt my stomach twist. She entered the office. A few seconds later, I heard drawers opening, one after another. She was looking for something. I stayed perfectly still. Then she whispered to herself. Where did she put it? I didn't know what she was looking for. But I knew one thing. She hadn't come here because she was worried about me. She had come because she wanted something. Amanda opened another drawer. Then she stopped. She pulled out her phone. "It's not here," she said quietly. I couldn't hear the other person's voice. Amanda listened. Then she replied, "I know." A pause. "No, she doesn't know." My heart began pounding harder. I leaned slightly forward. Amanda continued, "She still thinks the house is safe." I covered my mouth. Then she said something that changed everything. "The paperwork has to be found before she talks to that lawyer again." I felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath me. Robert. She knew about Robert. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about my house. It wasn't just about money. They were afraid I would discover something they believed was hidden in my paperwork. Amanda ended the call. She walked out of the office. I quickly stepped backward into the hallway and hid behind the partially closed door of the laundry room. She walked past me without seeing me. She locked the front door behind her. Then she left. I waited several minutes before moving. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called Robert. He answered. "Cheryl, Robert. She came to my house." "Who, Amanda? Was she alone?" "Yes." "What happened?" "She searched my office." Robert became silent. She said something. "What?" "She said the paperwork had to be found before I talked to you again." There was another pause. Then Robert asked, "Did she say what paperwork?" "No." "Are you still inside the house?" "Yes." "Lock every door." "I did." "Don't leave until you're sure she's gone." "She is." "Good." I sat down. "Robert, what could she be looking for?" "I don't know." but she was afraid I would talk to you. That tells us something. What she knows, you are taking steps to protect yourself. I looked toward the office. Then I remembered the missing blue folder, the missing financial records, the property valuation, Amanda's questions, and now her secret search. Everything was connected. But there was still one piece I didn't understand. Why was she so desperate to find those documents? I looked down at the photocopy I had taken from Frank's box. Then I remembered the account, the money, the property documents, and suddenly another thought entered my mind. Maybe Amanda had discovered something about my finances before I ever knew she was looking. Maybe she knew about an asset I had forgotten. Or maybe she had been planning around something she believed belonged to Michael. I didn't know. But I knew who could help me find out. I picked up the phone again. Robert. Yes, I found something in Frank's old lockbox. What documents he left for me? Anything important? Yes. I looked at the account statement. Very important. Robert was quiet. Bring everything to me. I will. And Cheryl. Yes. Do not tell Michael about the account yet. I frowned. Why? Because until we understand what Amanda knows, we shouldn't reveal what she doesn't. I looked toward the front door. For the first time, I realized that my greatest advantage wasn't the money. It was information. Amanda believed she knew everything about me. She didn't. And as I drove away from my house that afternoon, I made a decision. I would stop defending myself. I would stop explaining. I would let Amanda continue believing I was the frightened older woman she thought she could control. Because now I knew something she didn't. I had a secret of my own. And I had a feeling that secret was about to change the balance of power completely. I drove straight to Robert's office. I didn't call Michael. I didn't call Amanda. And I didn't tell anyone where I was going. For the first time since moving into my son's house, I felt like I was making decisions for myself again. When I walked into Robert's office, he immediately noticed the expression on my face. What happened? I placed my purse on his desk. Amanda broke into my house. Robert stood. Are you sure I was there? Did she damage anything? No. Did she take anything I don't know? He gestured toward the chair. Sit down and tell me exactly what happened. So I did. I told him about the missing folder, the property valuation, Amanda's questions about my finances, the key she had used to enter my house, and finally the conversation I had overheard. She said the paperwork had to be found before I talked to you again. Robert's expression became serious. Did she mention what paperwork? No. Did she know you were at the house? I don't think so. Good. I looked at him. Robert, what do you think is happening? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for the documents I had brought from Frank's lockbox. I handed them over. He examined the old property records first, then the investment documents, then the account statement. His eyebrows lifted. Cheryl, when was the last time you checked this account? I honestly don't remember. You knew it existed. Yes, but I thought there wasn't much left in it. Robert looked at the statement again. There is considerably more here than you remember. I know. He placed the paper on the desk. This is significant. Could Amanda know about it? I don't know. She has been asking about my finances. That doesn't prove she knows about this account. I understand. Robert looked at the property records. More importantly, this confirms what I told you. What the house is yours. I nodded. And this account is yours? Yes. Do you have any joint accounts with Michael? No. With Amanda? Absolutely not. Any power of attorney? Not that I know of. Good. I felt a strange sense of relief. Then, Robert asked, has anyone asked you to sign anything recently? No. Has anyone presented you with paperwork? I thought about it. Not directly. He nodded. That's good. I leaned forward. Then why are they searching for documents? Robert looked at me. That is the question we need answered. He explained that sometimes people who want control over an asset begin by collecting information. Ownership records, financial statements, property valuations, identification documents, anything that helps them understand what they might be dealing with. I swallowed. So you think they're planning something? I think someone is gathering information. That's enough to worry me. It should make you cautious, not frightened. I nodded. Then Robert said something that surprised me. Cheryl, there's another possibility. What they may believe there is a document that gives them authority over you or your property. I frowned. I don't have one. I know. But they might think you do. I thought about the missing blue folder, the drawer in my office, the documents Amanda had searched for. Suddenly, the pieces seemed to fit. What if she thinks the missing folder contains something that's possible, something that would give her control possibly? But there isn't anything like that in the documents I found. Robert nodded. Then maybe she doesn't know that. I sat back. For the first time, I began to understand why Amanda had been so persistent. She didn't necessarily know the truth. She might have been acting on something she had been told, Someone might have convinced her that a particular document existed. Someone might have told her that my house or finances could be accessed if she found it. I looked at Robert. Do you think someone else is involved? I don't know. Could it be Michael? Robert's expression softened. I can't answer that for you. I don't want to believe it. You don't have to decide what you believe yet. He pushed the notebook toward me. Continue documenting everything. I nodded. Then he asked, and Cheryl? Yes, don't tell Michael about this account. I remembered his earlier warning. I won't. Not until we know more. Okay. I gathered the documents. Before I left, Robert made copies of everything. He placed the originals in a secure folder. Keep these somewhere safe. I will. Not at Michael's house. I nodded. I understand. That afternoon, I went to a bank. Not the one where my account was held, a different branch. I wanted to understand exactly what protections were available to me. I met with a bank representative and explained that I wanted to review my account security. I changed several security questions, updated my contact information, added additional verification requirements. And most importantly, I made sure no one else had access to the account. When I walked out of the bank, I felt lighter, not because the danger was gone, but because I had stopped waiting for someone else to protect me. I could protect myself. That evening, I returned to Michael and Amanda's house. Amanda was sitting on the couch. She looked up. Where have you been? I had some errands. Anything important? No. She smiled. Good. I sat across from her. For a moment, we watched television in silence. Then she said Michael and I were talking about your house again. I looked at her. My house. Yes. What about it? We think you should consider selling. I didn't react. Instead, I asked calmly, why? Because it doesn't make sense for you to maintain such a large property. I've managed it for years. I know. And I still can. She sighed. Cheryl, you're making this personal. It is personal. She looked annoyed. I mean, you're taking this as an attack. I haven't said that. You don't have to. I smiled. You seem to know what I'm thinking. She stared at me. Then she softened her voice. We're just trying to make your life easier. I nodded. Perhaps. Then think about selling. I'll think about it. She smiled. Good. She seemed satisfied. But I knew something she didn't. I had already decided. I wasn't selling my home. Not because Amanda told me not to. Not because Robert told me to keep it. Because it was mine. Frank and I had built our life there. I wasn't going to let someone turn 30 years of memories into a number on a property valuation. Later that night, Michael knocked on my door. Mom, come in. He sat beside me. You and Amanda talked? Yes. What did she say? She thinks I should sell the house. He looked uncomfortable. She thinks it would be better for you. And what do you think? He hesitated. I don't know. I looked at him. You've been looking at property values. He stared at me. How did you know I saw the paperwork? He lowered his eyes. I was just trying to understand what the house is worth. Why? He sighed. Mom, we have expenses. I felt a chill. What expenses? He didn't answer. Amanda wants us to move eventually. We're somewhere bigger. I looked at him. And you think my house can help pay for that? His eyes widened. No, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He stood. I don't want to fight with you. Neither do I. He looked at me. I'm just trying to help. I nodded. I believe you. He looked relieved, but I wasn't sure whether I was telling the truth. After he left, I sat alone. His words kept echoing in my mind. We have expenses. Amanda wants us to move somewhere bigger. And suddenly, I remembered something Amanda had said weeks earlier. Your life isn't just about you anymore. At the time, I had thought she meant my health. Now, I wasn't so sure. Maybe she meant money. Maybe she meant the house. Maybe she believed my resources should become part of their future. I opened my notebook. I wrote down everything. The date, the conversation, Michael's words, Amanda's request, the property valuation, the missing documents, the secret visit to my house. Then I closed the notebook. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I simply sat there and thought. For years, I had believed that family meant sharing everything. Now I was beginning to understand that love did not require surrendering boundaries. I could love my son. I could forgive him. I could even help him. But I did not have to hand over my home or my financial security to prove that love. The next morning, something happened that changed everything again. I came downstairs and found an envelope on the kitchen counter. My name was written across the front. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't from Robert. It wasn't from the bank. And it wasn't from Michael. It was a formal-looking document concerning my house. At the bottom was a line marked for my signature. My heart began pounding. Someone had prepared paperwork for me to sign. and whoever had prepared it had assumed I would simply sign without asking questions. I read the first paragraph again, then the second. I didn't understand every legal term, but I understood enough. It involved authority over my property. I folded the paper carefully. I didn't sign it. I didn't confront Amanda. Instead, I put the document inside my purse. Then I walked into the kitchen. Amanda was standing by the sink. She turned. "Oh, you found it." I looked at her. "Yes." "Good." She smiled. "Michael thought you might want to take care of that today." I stared at her. "Did he?" "Yes." I smiled back. "Then I suppose I should." Amanda relaxed. She thought she had won. She had no idea what I was about to do, because I wasn't going to sign that document. I was going to take it straight to Robert, and this time I was going to find out exactly who had prepared it. I carried the envelope in my purse all morning. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. I already knew enough to understand that signing it would be a mistake. Instead, I waited. Amanda seemed completely relaxed after leaving the document on the counter. She moved around the kitchen, humming softly, preparing breakfast, as though she hadn't just handed me something that could affect my home. That bothered me more than anything. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't worried that I might ask questions. She seemed confident that I would sign. That confidence told me something. Someone had convinced her I would cooperate, or perhaps they had convinced her I had no choice. I finished my coffee. Amanda looked at me. So what did you look at the paperwork?" "Yes, and I'll deal with it." She smiled. "Good." I watched her carefully. "Who prepared it?" She paused. "Why, I'd like to know. It came from someone who understands these things. That doesn't answer my question." She sighed. "Cheryl, it's just paperwork. Then there shouldn't be a problem telling me who prepared it." She looked irritated. "I don't remember the name." I knew she was lying. The answer came too quickly. I smiled. "Okay." She looked at me suspiciously. "You're not going to make this difficult, are you?" "No." "Good." I stood. "I have an appointment." "With who?" "A professional." She frowned. "What kind? I'll tell you later." For the first time, I saw fear flash across her face. It disappeared almost immediately, but I had seen it. And that was enough. I drove directly to Robert's office. Howe was waiting for me when I arrived. I placed the envelope on his desk. This was left for me this morning. He opened it carefully. As he read, his expression became more serious. "Did you sign this number good?" He continued reading. Then he looked at me. "Did they explain what this document was?" "Number, did anyone pressure you to sign it? Amanda told me Michael thought I should take care of it." Robert leaned back. "That's interesting." "What?" "This document gives someone authority related to your property." My stomach tightened. "Who?" He pointed to one section. "The wording is broad." I stared at the page. "What does that mean?" "It means you would be giving another person considerable control." Who? Robert looked at the signature section. There was a blank line where my name should have been, but underneath it was another section. I read it twice. The proposed representative was not Michael. It wasn't Amanda either. It was a name I didn't recognize. I looked at Robert. "Who is this? I don't know yet. Could this person sell my house? Depending on how this document was used and what authority was actually granted, it could create serious problems." I felt sick. "So they wanted me to sign this without explaining it?" "Yes." I shook my head. "Why would Amanda do that?" Robert didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Do you recognize the name?" "No." "Have you ever met this person?" "Never." "Hein might a copy. I'm going to investigate the document." I looked at him. "Can you find out who prepared it?" "Yes, please do." He nodded. Then he looked at me carefully. "Cheryl, I want you to understand something. What you don't need to confront Amanda. I wasn't planning to." "Good. If she asks about the document, tell her you are reviewing it. That's all. That's all." I nodded. Before leaving, I asked one more question. "Robert, could this be connected to the missing blue folder?" "Possibly." "What if it is?" "Then whoever took that folder may have been looking for information needed to complete this." I felt a chill. The missing folder suddenly seemed much more important. I returned home that afternoon. Amanda was in the living room. She looked up immediately. "You've been gone a while." "Yes. Did you take care of the paperwork? I had someone look at it." Her face changed. "Someone?" "Yes." "Who? My attorney." Silence. I watched her carefully. She looked away. "You didn't need to do that." "I think I did." "Cheryl, you're making everything complicated. I'd rather be careful." She stood. "You don't trust us." I looked at her. "I trust myself." She stared at me. Then she walked toward the kitchen. I followed. "Where's Michael still at work? Does he know about the document?" She hesitated. "I don't know." That answer surprised me. "Does he know you gave it to me?" "Yes." "Did he know what was in it?" She didn't answer. I waited. Finally, she said, He knew we were trying to help. That wasn't an answer, but it told me something. Michael might not have known the details. I went upstairs. I closed my bedroom door. Then I called Michael. He answered after several rings. Mom. Michael, I need to ask you something. Okay, did you know Amanda gave me paperwork to sign concerning my house? There was silence. What paperwork? My heart sank. You didn't know? No. I closed my eyes. Are you sure? Yes. What did Amanda tell you? That you were considering getting help with some legal and financial matters? Did she mention a document? No. I believed him. Not completely, but enough. Michael, did you ask anyone to prepare something for me? No. Did you give anyone permission to act on your behalf? No. His voice became tense. Mom, what is happening? I don't know yet. Is Amanda doing something? I paused. I don't want to accuse anyone. Mom, I just need you to be careful. About what? Don't sign anything. What? Anything concerning my house or finances? He was silent. Then he said I wouldn't. I know. Mom, are you scared? I looked around the room. No. It was another lie. I was terrified, but I was no longer helpless. I'm handling it. Can I come home? Not yet. Why? Because I need you to think before you react. He didn't answer. Then he said quietly, I love you. I love you too. After we hung up, I sat on my bed. I didn't know what hurt more, the possibility that Amanda was deceiving me, or the possibility that Michael had been so trusting that he hadn't noticed what was happening. I wanted to protect him too, not from Amanda, from the consequences of believing her without asking questions. That evening, something unexpected happened. Michael came home early. He walked through the front door carrying a briefcase. His face was pale. Mom, I came downstairs. What happened? He looked at Amanda. She was standing in the kitchen. Then he looked back at me. I found something. My heart started pounding. What? He opened his briefcase. Inside was a stack of papers. I found these in my office. Amanda immediately walked toward him. What are those? Michael looked at her. I don't know. He placed them on this table. I recognized the handwriting on the top page. Amanda's. My stomach dropped. Michael picked up the first document. It has Mom's name on it. Amanda's face went white. Michael, give me that. He pulled it away. Why? Because you don't understand. Then explain it. She looked at me, then at Michael, then back at me. For the first time since I had met her, Amanda looked genuinely frightened. Michael opened another page. It was a property valuation. Another was a list of my known assets. Another contained notes about my house. And another had a handwritten heading, Documents Needed. Michael stared at the pages. Why do you have this? Amanda didn't answer. Why are you collecting information about Mom? I was trying to help. This isn't help. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand what I've been dealing with. Michael looked confused. What have you been dealing with, you? She pointed at him. You're the one who doesn't understand. Michael stepped back. What does that mean? Amanda shook her head. I was trying to make sure our family had a future. My heart sank. There it was, the truth hiding behind all those conversations. Not my health, not my safety, their future. Michael stared at her. What does Mom's house have to do with our future? Amanda said nothing. I stepped forward. It has everything to do with it. They both looked at me. I remained calm. Because you've been treating my home like an asset you already own. Amanda's face hardened. I never said that. You didn't have to. Michael looked between us. Mom, what did she do? I looked at my son. Your wife went into my house without telling me. His eyes widened. What? She searched my office. He turned toward Amanda. Is that true? She didn't answer. Is it true? Finally, she whispered. Yes. Michael stepped away from her. Why? She began crying. I was looking for something. What I can't tell you. Why not? Because you wouldn't understand. Michael shook his head. I understand enough. The room became silent. Then he looked at me. Mom, what are you going to do? I took a slow breath. I don't know yet, but inside I already knew. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to humiliate Amanda. I wasn't going to destroy my son's marriage. I was going to let the truth come out completely. And I knew exactly where to start, with the name on that document. The stranger who had been listed as the person who could receive authority over my property. Because whoever that person was, they might be the missing piece that finally explained the entire plan. For several seconds, nobody moved. The papers were spread across the kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle that none of us wanted to finish. Michael stood beside me. Amanda stood across from us. And for the first time, I could see that my son was no longer looking at his wife with unquestioning trust. He was looking at her with doubt. Who is this person? Michael asked. Amanda wiped her eyes. I told you I was trying to help. That isn't an answer. She looked at me. You've been talking to Cheryl's lawyer. Yes, I said. And now you think I'm doing something terrible. I don't think, I replied calmly. I'm trying to understand. Michael picked up the document again. This says someone could receive authority over Mom's property. Amanda shook her head. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Then how was it supposed to happen? She didn't answer. Michael's voice became sharper. Amanda. She looked down. I was scared. Of what? That we'd lose everything. I felt a chill. What does that mean? She looked at me. You don't understand what it's like. What isn't fair about your situation? Our bills. Michael stared at her. What bills? She didn't answer. He stepped closer. You told me we were doing fine. We're not. How bad is it? Amanda's face crumpled. I didn't want you to worry. Michael shook his head. So instead you involved my mother? I thought we could fix it. By using her house, I never said we would take her house. You were collecting property records. I needed to know our options. What options? She looked toward me. Selling it. Silence filled the room. Michael closed his eyes. Mom was right. Amanda's face went pale. Michael, no. He shook his head. You told me this was about keeping Mom safe. It was. No, it wasn't. His voice broke. You made me believe she couldn't take care of herself. Amanda began crying again. I was trying to protect us. From what? From losing everything. Michael looked at her. You should have told me the truth. I was afraid you would say no. He didn't respond. I stood quietly. I had imagined this moment so many times. I had imagined myself shouting, demanding answers, making Amanda feel the pain she had caused me. But now that the truth was finally beginning to surface, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, deeply tired, because this wasn't just about a house. It was about my son, the little boy I had raised, the man I had trusted, the family I thought I had. Michael turned toward me. Mom, I'm sorry. I shook my head. You don't need to apologize for something you didn't know. But I should have known. I reached for his hand. You trusted your wife. I should have trusted you. You can do both. He looked at me. I don't know what to do now. Neither do I. That was the truth. I knew how to protect my property. I knew how to protect my finances. But I didn't know how to repair what had happened between us. Michael picked up the document again. I'm taking this. Amanda looked at him. What are you going to do with it? I'm giving it to Mom's lawyer. Her face changed. No. That one word came out immediately. Michael stopped. Why? I don't want him involved. I looked at her. Why not? She didn't answer. Michael stared at her. Then he understood. You're afraid of what he'll find. Amanda looked away. I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. There was more. Something she hadn't told us. Something beyond the house. I picked up the document. I'm taking this to Robert. Amanda stepped toward me. Cheryl, please. I looked at her. Please what? She hesitated. Don't destroy our family. I almost laughed. I'm not the one who put my family in this position. Her eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake. You made several. I know. Then tell us everything. She looked at Michael. Then at me. I can't. Michael's expression hardened. Why? Because it would ruin everything. What would? She shook her head. I need time. No, Michael said. You had time. He picked up his coat. I need to think. He walked toward the door. Amanda followed him. Michael, wait. He stopped. Don't. She froze. I need some space. Then he walked out. The front door closed. Amanda stood in the middle of the room. She looked suddenly smaller. Not powerful, not confident, just frightened. I gathered the documents. She watched me. You're really going to your lawyer? Yes. Cheryl, I won't lie to you. She nodded. I understand. I walked upstairs. Inside my room, I placed the papers into my bag. Then I called Robert. He answered immediately. I need to see you. What's happened? I found out who prepared the document, who I don't know yet. He paused. But Michael found more paperwork. What kind? Property records, asset lists, notes. Robert became quiet. Bring everything. I will. And Cheryl, yes. Don't let anyone pressure you into signing anything. I won't. I hung up. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me. My hair was messy. My eyes were tired. But there was something different in my face. Strength. Not the loud kind. Not anger. The quiet kind that comes when a person realizes she has survived worse things than betrayal. I drove to Robert's office alone. He examined everything carefully. When he reached the final page, he stopped. What? He pointed to the name of the proposed representative. This person. Who is he? Robert looked at me. He's connected to a company that specializes in property and financial restructuring. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means they work with people who have significant debt. I stared at him. Debt. Yes. Could Amanda have contacted them? Possibly. I sat down. Then this really was about money. Robert nodded. It appears that way. I looked at the property valuation. Why would they need my house? They may have believed it could be sold or used as security. But it isn't theirs. No. Then how did they expect to get control? Robert pointed at the document. That's what this was designed to do. I felt sick. Did Amanda prepare it? She may have obtained it from someone else. Who? Robert tapped the company name. We need to find out. I made several phone calls while I waited. Eventually, he turned toward me. I have something. What the company representative listed here had contact with someone matching Amanda's information. My heart stopped. When? Several weeks ago. Before I moved in? Yes. That explained everything. The plan hadn't started after I moved into their house. It had started before, maybe even before my fall. I looked at Robert. Why, we don't know yet. Then his phone rang. He answered. Hello, I watched his expression change. He listened. Then he said, understood. He hung up. What happened? The company has records of an inquiry. From Amanda, apparently. When? 3 months ago. 3 months. I felt a cold wave pass through me. That was before my fall. Before I moved into their house. Before Amanda started talking about my safety. I whispered, then the fall wasn't the beginning. Robert looked at me. No. I stared at the table. The timeline was suddenly becoming clearer. Amanda had been interested in my property before I ever needed her help. My fall had simply given her an opportunity. That realization hurt more than anything else, because it meant the kindness I had received after my accident might not have been kindness at all. Maybe it had been a strategy. Robert reached across the desk. Cheryl. I looked up. Whatever happened before your fall, don't make assumptions until we have evidence. I know. You need to protect yourself, but you also need to protect yourself from jumping to conclusions. I nodded. I understand. On the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about that timeline. 3 months before my fall. 3 months before I moved in. 3 months before I was called a burden. Something had been happening behind my back. And suddenly, one question became impossible to ignore. What if my fall hadn't been an accident? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. No. I couldn't think that way. I had slipped. That was all. There was no evidence otherwise. But when I reached Michael's house, I saw something that made my heart stop. Amanda was standing on the porch. She was holding a small blue folder. My missing folder. I parked the car. She looked directly at me. Neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, You weren't supposed to find out this way. My heart pounded. What is in that folder? She looked down at it, then back at me. Everything! I stared at the blue folder in Amanda's hands. For several seconds, I couldn't move. That folder had been missing for weeks. I had searched every drawer in my office. I had searched boxes, cabinets, closets, and even the garage. And now Amanda was standing in front of me, holding it as though she had been waiting for this exact moment. What is in that folder? I asked again. Amanda looked exhausted. Things you never knew about. Then show me. She hesitated. I stepped closer. Amanda, that folder belongs to me. I know. Then give it to me. She held it tightly against her chest. Before I do, you need to understand something. I've heard enough explanations. This isn't what you think. I almost laughed. That is what people say when it is exactly what I think. Her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. I know. You called me a burden. She looked down. I was angry. You searched my house. I was desperate. You prepared documents for me to sign. I thought I had no other choice. I shook my head. You always had a choice. She finally lowered the folder. I know. Then she handed it to me. I took it immediately. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were copies of my property records, bank statements, old insurance documents, tax information, a copy of the original mortgage, and several handwritten pages. I turned through them slowly. Then I stopped. There was a page with a list of numbers. At the top was written, Estimated Available Resources. I looked at Amanda. What is this? She didn't answer. I continued reading. The page listed the value of my house, my investment account, my retirement savings, even the approximate value of several personal assets. Someone had calculated everything I owned. I felt something inside me go cold. You made a list of my assets. Amanda nodded. Yes. Why, I told you. I need to hear it again. She swallowed. Because we were in trouble. What kind of trouble? She looked towards the house. Michael doesn't know everything. My heart tightened. What doesn't he know? Amanda sat down on the porch step. I remained standing. Our business failed. I stared at her. What business? The remodeling company. I remembered Michael mentioning work problems months earlier. He had said things were slow. He had said contracts were being delayed. He had never said that business was failing. Amanda continued. We owed money. How much? She gave me a number. I felt dizzy. That much, she nodded. Credit cards, equipment loans, supplier debts, taxes. I looked at the folder. And you thought my house would solve it. At first I thought we could borrow against it. I stared at her. You wanted to use my home as collateral. I thought we could pay everything back. With what I believed the business would recover. And if it didn't? She said nothing. I already knew the answer. My house would have been at risk. I closed the folder. Why didn't you tell Michael? Because he would have left. What he would have blamed me. Maybe he should have known. I was afraid. I shook my head. You were afraid, so you made me responsible for your choices? No. Yes. She looked at me. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you decided my life was the solution to your problems. Tears rolled down her face. I didn't want it to be that way. But it was. She nodded. Yes. I sat beside her. For the first time, I wasn't looking at her as an enemy. I was looking at her as a deeply frightened woman who had made terrible decisions. That didn't excuse what she had done, but it helped me understand it. What about the document? I asked. She looked at me. I found someone who said there was a way to handle the property without putting everything directly in Michael's name. Who? A financial consultant. The person named in the document. Yes. How did you find him? Someone from the company knew him, and he told you to get me to sign. She hesitated. Yes. My stomach turned. What did he tell you? That older homeowners sometimes put their property into arrangements that protect the family? Protect the family. She nodded. I believed him. You didn't understand the document, not completely. Then why did you give it to me? Because he said it was necessary. I closed my eyes. She hadn't simply made one bad decision. She had allowed someone else to convince her that manipulating me was acceptable. Did you pay him? She shook her head. No. Did he ask for anything? Not directly. What does that mean? He said his company would receive compensation if the arrangement went through. I looked at her. So he had a financial interest. Yes. That explained the pressure. Someone stood to make money if I signed. I looked down at the folder again. Then I noticed another document, a copy of an email. I read the first line. My name appeared in it. But what caught my attention was the date. 3 months before my fall. I looked at Amanda. Why were you contacting them before my accident? She froze. I held up the paper. This is dated 3 months before I fell. Her face changed. I know. Why? She looked away. We were already struggling. That doesn't explain it. She didn't answer. Amanda. Finally, she whispered, I asked them whether there was a way to use your property if you ever agreed to help us. Ever agreed? Yes. So you were thinking about my house before I ever moved in. I wasn't planning anything then. But you were asking. Yes. I looked at the date again. Something inside me wanted to believe the fall was completely unrelated, and I still believed it was. But I couldn't ignore the timing. Did you cause my fall? Amanda's eyes widened. No. Her answer came instantly. No, Cheryl, I swear. I watched her carefully. I didn't touch you. Did you know I was going to be alone that day? No. Did you know I was going to fall? No. Then what happened? I don't know. I nodded slowly. I believed her, at least about that. The accident had been real. The betrayal came afterward. And somehow that was almost harder to accept, because it meant the tragedy had simply given Amanda the opportunity she had already been looking for. I opened the folder again. There was one final page. It was a handwritten note. I recognized Amanda's handwriting. It said, Need Cheryl to believe she cannot manage house alone. I stared at the sentence. My chest tightened. I read it again. Then again. This wasn't about helping me. This was about creating a story. A story in which I was too old, too weak, too confused, too dependent to make decisions about my own property. I looked at Amanda. Did you write this? She began crying. Yes. Why? Because I thought if you believed you couldn't manage the house, you'd agree to sell. I nodded slowly. There it was. The truth. The cruelest part wasn't the money. It wasn't the paperwork. It wasn't even the secret conversations. It was that she had tried to make me doubt myself. She had wanted me to believe I was a burden, so I would willingly surrender what I had spent decades building. I closed the folder. You should have asked me. I know. You should have told me the truth. I know. You should have trusted that I might help you without being manipulated. She cried harder. I was ashamed. I looked at her. I understand shame. She lifted her eyes. But shame doesn't give you permission to hurt someone. She nodded. I know. We sat silently. Then the front door opened. Michael walked out. He stopped when he saw us. What's going on? I looked at him. Amanda told me the truth. His face tightened. What truth? I handed him the folder. He opened it. I watched him read. His expression changed with every page. When he reached the handwritten note, he stopped. What is this? Amanda whispered. I wrote it. Michael looked at her. You wanted Mom to think she was incapable. I was desperate. You lied to me. I was scared. You lied to my mother. I know. You almost put her house at risk. I know. Michael's voice broke. How could you do this? Amanda stood. I thought I was saving us. No. He shook his head. You were saving yourself. She began crying. Michael turned away. I reached for his arm. Michael. He looked at me. I don't know what to do, Mom. I squeezed his hand. Neither do I. Then I looked at Amanda. But we know what has to happen next. She stared at me. What the truth goes to Robert? She nodded. And after that, I took a breath. After that, you and Michael decide what happens in your marriage. Michael looked at me. And you? I looked toward the street. I go home. He blinked. Mom, I've been away long enough. He stepped toward me. Are you sure? I smiled. Yes. For the first time in months, I felt that smile reach my eyes. I wasn't smiling because everything was fixed. It wasn't. I was smiling because I was finally going home. I picked up the blue folder. Then I looked at Amanda one last time. I hope you learned something from this. She nodded through her tears. What I said quietly, never convince someone they're powerless just because you want what they have. Then I walked toward my car. I didn't know what would happen to Michael's marriage. I didn't know whether Amanda would face legal consequences. And I didn't know whether my family could ever return to what it had been. But I knew one thing. The woman who had been called a burden was no longer asking permission to stand on her own feet. I had my home. I had my documents. I had the truth. And most importantly, I had myself. I drove home with the blue folder sitting on the passenger seat. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was running away from something. I was returning to something. My house, my life, my own quiet. When I turned into the driveway, I stopped the car and looked at the porch. The afternoon sunlight fell across the wooden steps exactly the way it had so many times when Frank was still alive. I got out slowly. Then I stood there for a moment breathing in the familiar air. I unlocked the front door. The house was silent. But this time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I carried the blue folder into my office and placed it on the desk. I didn't open it again. I had already seen enough. I called Robert and told him I was home. I want to go through everything with you tomorrow, I said. Of course. There's something else. What I want to make sure nothing like this can ever happen again. You're thinking about updating your estate plan? Yes. Good. I also want to make sure Michael is protected. Robert paused. Are you sure? Yes. Even after everything, I looked toward the family photograph on my desk. He's still my son. That doesn't mean you have to give him access to your assets. I know. I just wanted to make sure you understood the distinction. I do. I had learned that distinction the hard way. Love and access were not the same thing. Forgiveness and permission were not the same thing. And being a mother did not mean sacrificing myself every time someone I loved made a mistake. The next morning, Robert came to my house. We sat in my office for nearly 2 hours. He reviewed every document, the property records, the investment account, the proposed authorization, the notes from the blue folder, and the correspondence connected to the financial consultant. By the time we finished, everything was organized. Robert closed the final folder. You have options. What kind you can pursue this formally? I looked at him. What would that involve? Depending on what further evidence shows, there could be legal consequences for anyone who attempted to obtain control of your property through deception. I nodded. And if I don't want to pursue that, you don't have to decide today. I looked down at my hands. That was the difficult part. I wanted justice, but I didn't want revenge. There was a difference. I wanted Amanda to understand the seriousness of what she had done. I wanted Michael to understand that trust could not replace communication, but I didn't want to destroy people simply because they had hurt me. Robert seemed to understand. You don't have to punish someone to protect yourself. I looked up. That sounds simple. It isn't. I smiled. No, it isn't. After he left, I made lunch for myself. A simple turkey sandwich, a bowl of tomato soup. I sat at the kitchen table and ate slowly. For months, every meal had been surrounded by someone else's schedule. Someone else's opinion, someone else's concern about what I should or shouldn't eat. Now I could sit in my own kitchen and enjoy my own lunch. It felt almost luxurious. That afternoon, Michael called. Mom, yes, can I come over? Of course. He arrived 20 minutes later. He stood on the porch for several seconds before knocking. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted. He hugged me immediately. I held him tightly. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, I've missed you. I've missed you too. We sat in the living room. He looked around. I forgot how much I loved this house. You grew up here. I know. He smiled faintly. I used to think this hallway was huge. You were 4. I thought I could ride my bicycle through it. You tried. I crashed into the wall. I laughed. He laughed too. For a moment we were simply mother and son again. Then his smile disappeared. Mom, I need to tell you something. What I didn't know how bad things were. With Amanda. He nodded. She told me we had some debt, but she made it sound manageable. What changed? She showed me statements. I waited. Our business is in serious trouble. I felt sorry for him, but I didn't reach for my checkbook. I didn't offer my investment account. I didn't offer my house. Instead, I asked, "What are you going to do?" He looked at me. I don't know. You'll figure it out. I'm scared. I know. He looked down. Part of me wants to leave. I remained silent. Not because I don't love her. I understand. But I don't know if I can trust her. I thought about Amanda's face on the porch. She made serious choices. I know. Whether your marriage survives is something only you can decide. He nodded. I'm not asking you to choose. Good. I just need my mother. I reached over and took his hand. You have her. His eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Then he said something I hadn't expected. Mom, I want to pay you back. For what? For everything you've ever done for me. I smiled. You don't owe me for being your mother. I mean the money. I haven't given you any money. Exactly. He looked confused. You could have. I understood what he meant. He knew I had the resources. And for the first time, he understood that I had chosen not to use them to solve his problems. That was a lesson for both of us. I will help you think through your options, I said. But I won't rescue you from consequences that belong to you. He nodded slowly. I think that's fair. It is. We sat quietly. Then he looked toward the office. Are you keeping the house? I smiled. Yes. Good. He looked relieved. I was afraid you'd sell it because of us. No. Why? I looked around. Because this is home. He nodded. I understand. Before he left, he hugged me again. I love you, Mom. I love you too. After he drove away, I stood on the porch and watched his car disappear down the street. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew our relationship had changed. Not broken, changed. He would have to become responsible for his own life, and I would have to stop confusing motherhood with self-sacrifice. That evening, I received a call from Robert. Cheryl. Yes, I have an update. What is it? The consultant connected to the paperwork has agreed to provide information. My heart tightened. What kind of information? Apparently Amanda wasn't the only person who contacted him. I sat down. Who else? Someone claiming to represent Michael. I frowned. Michael. That's what the records say. That doesn't make sense. I know. Could someone have used his name? Possibly. Did Michael sign anything not according to the documents we have? I closed my eyes. What does the consultant say? He says someone contacted him using information associated with Michael. I felt a chill. Then we need to find out who. We're working on it. I looked toward the window. The sun was setting. Orange light filled the room. For weeks I had been searching for the person behind everything. Now I had another question. Was Amanda truly acting alone, or had someone else been guiding her? The following morning, Robert sent me copies of the records. I read them carefully. There were dates, phone numbers, names, and one detail that stopped me cold. The first inquiry about my property had been made before Amanda ever contacted the consultant, but the inquiry had come from a number registered to a business associate of Michael's. I stared at the page. Michael had told me he knew nothing. I wanted to believe him, and I still did. But now I needed to know the truth. I called him. Mom, I need to ask you something. What do you know a man named Daniel Brooks? There was a long silence. Yes. Who is he? He used to handle some business paperwork for us. Is he still involved with the company? No. When did you stop working with him? About 4 months ago. My heart pounded. Why? Because I found out he had been making decisions without telling me. What kind of decisions? Financial ones. I looked at the document. Michael, did you ever authorize Daniel to contact anyone about my house? No. Are you sure? Absolutely. Then I think you need to hear something. I told him about the records. There was silence. Then he whispered, Mom, what I think Daniel may have been the person who put Amanda in contact with that consultant. I closed my eyes. Suddenly, everything made sense. Amanda had been desperate. Michael had been unaware. And someone who already understood their financial problems had seen an opportunity. But there was still one thing I couldn't understand. Why had Daniel been interested in my house? Michael answered before I could ask. Because he owes money too. My stomach tightened. To whom I don't know. Michael, I'll find out. No. What, don't confront him? Why? Because we don't know what he is capable of. Michael went silent. Then he said, Mom, I'm sorry. You didn't do this, but I brought him into our lives. That isn't the same thing. I hung up. Then I walked into the office. I looked at the blue folder. For the first time, I realized something. The person who had called me a burden had been desperate. The person who had tried to use my house had been afraid. And the person who had encouraged them may have been looking for something much larger than my property. I didn't know how this would end, but I knew how I wanted it to end. With the truth. Not revenge. Not humiliation. Truth. That evening, I stood on the porch again. The same porch where Amanda had once told me I was a burden. I looked at the house, at the windows, at the garden Frank had planted, at the old porch swing, and I smiled. This time my smile wasn't hiding fear. It wasn't hiding pain. It was the smile of a woman who had finally reclaimed her own life. I had been told I was a burden, but I had learned something important. A person does not become a burden simply because someone else no longer values them. And sometimes the strongest response to cruelty isn't revenge. It's standing back up, going home, and refusing to disappear. The next morning I woke before sunrise. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up thinking about Amanda. I didn't wake up wondering what she was planning. I didn't wake up wondering whether my son still trusted me. I simply opened my eyes and listened to the quiet house. My house. I made coffee and walked to the kitchen window. The garden outside was beginning to brighten. Frank had planted those roses more than 20 years ago. He used to say roses taught patience because you couldn't force them to bloom. I smiled at the memory. Then my phone rang. It was Robert. Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning. I have an update. I took a breath. About Daniel, yes. I sat at the kitchen table. What did you find? Robert explained that Daniel Brooks had been involved in financial discussions with several people connected to Michael's former business. He had access to business information. He knew about their debts. He knew they were under pressure. And most importantly, he had learned that I owned a valuable property without a mortgage large enough to make it inaccessible. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. So he saw an opportunity. That appears to be the case. Did he tell Amanda what to do? We can't prove every conversation yet, but there is evidence that he introduced her to the consultant. I closed my eyes. That was enough. Amanda had made her own choices, but someone had encouraged those choices. Someone had taken advantage of her fear, and someone had helped create a plan that could have put my home at risk. What happens now, I asked. That depends on what you want. I looked around my kitchen. For years, I had thought justice meant making someone pay. Now, I wasn't so sure. What would you recommend? Protect yourself first, then decide whether you want to pursue anything further. I nodded. I want my documents secured. They are. I want my accounts protected. They are. And I want my estate plan changed, already scheduled. I smiled. Thank you. There is one more thing. What Amanda wants to speak with you. I was quiet. Alone. Yes. Where? She asked if she could come to your house. I looked toward the front door. After everything, part of me wanted to say no, but another part of me knew I needed closure. Tell her she can come. Are you sure? Yes. Do you want me there? I thought about it. No. If you feel uncomfortable, call me. I will. We ended the call. 2 hours later, Amanda arrived. She stood on my porch wearing a simple sweater and jeans. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had once told me I was a burden. She looked tired, older, human. I opened the door. Come in. She stepped inside. Her eyes moved around the room. I remember this place. I know. She looked toward Frank's chair. I've always liked that chair. He loved it. She nodded. We sat across from each other. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Amanda said, I don't expect you to forgive me. I looked at her. That's honest. I hurt you. Yes. I lied to Michael. Yes. I made you feel like you were old and helpless. Yes. She lowered her eyes. I was wrong. I didn't rush to comfort her. She needed to sit with that truth. I thought if I could convince you that the house was too much for you, you'd sell it. I nodded. I know. I thought the money would save us. Would it have? She shook her head. No. Then why? Because I was scared. I understood fear, but I also understood responsibility. Fear explains what you did, I said quietly. It doesn't excuse it. I know. She began crying. I don't know if Michael will forgive me. That is something you have to work through with him. Will you forgive me? I looked at her. It was the hardest question she had asked. I don't know. She nodded. I understand. I may forgive you someday. She looked up. But forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. I know. And it doesn't mean I trust you again immediately. I understand. I took a breath. But I don't hate you. Her eyes filled with tears. Why not? Because hatred would keep me tied to what happened. She looked down. I don't want that either. I reached across the table. Not to embrace her, just to place my hand near hers. You have a lot to repair. I know. You need to be honest with Michael. I will. You need to deal with the debts honestly. I will. And you need to stay away from anyone who tells you that manipulating another person is the only way out. She nodded. I will. Then she stood. Before she left, she turned toward me. Cheryl. Yes, I am sorry. This time I believed her. I know. She walked out. I watched her drive away. I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. The final confrontation wasn't a screaming match. There was no dramatic revenge. There didn't need to be. Sometimes, justice is simply the moment when someone can no longer hide from what they have done. That afternoon, Michael came over. He walked through the front door carrying a small box. What is that? I asked. He placed it on the table. Some of your things. I opened it. Inside were photographs, a sweater, an old recipe book, and a framed picture of Frank. I smiled. I thought these belonged here. They do. We sat together. How are things? I asked. He sighed. Complicated. With Amanda, yes. Are you staying together? He looked at me. I don't know. I nodded. You don't have to decide today. I know. He looked toward the window. I'm starting over. That may be good for you. I've learned a lot. Such as? He smiled sadly. That love isn't supposed to mean letting someone make every decision for you. I smiled. That's a good lesson. And I learned something else. What you can love someone and still tell them no. I felt tears rise in my eyes. That may be the most important lesson of all. He took my hand. I was so worried about losing everything. You still have a lot. He smiled. I have my mother. I squeezed his hand. And I have my son. We sat there quietly. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like home again. Weeks passed. The legal paperwork was finalized. My accounts were secured. My property remained entirely mine. The financial consultant was no longer involved. Daniel was removed from any connection with Michael's business affairs. Michael began working with an accountant to deal with the company's debts honestly. Amanda started taking responsibility for the choices she had made, and I returned to the life I had almost forgotten I still had. I joined a local gardening group. I started attending a Saturday morning book club. I invited my neighbor Linda over for coffee. I began taking long walks again. Little things, ordinary things, but they felt extraordinary. One Sunday afternoon, I stood in my garden trimming the roses. Michael came through the gate. Need help? I smiled. You can start with that bush. He laughed. You're still giving orders. Of course. He picked up the gardening shears. For a while, we worked without talking. Then he looked at me. Mom. Yes. Do you ever regret not helping us financially? I thought about it. No. He nodded. I don't either. I looked at him. Why? Because if you had rescued us, we wouldn't have learned how to save ourselves. I smiled. That was the moment I knew everything would eventually be okay. Not because every problem had disappeared, but because we had finally learned the difference between love and dependence. That evening, I sat on the porch as the sun went down. I thought about the day Amanda had called me a burden. I remembered how small I had felt, how embarrassed, how certain I had been that my place in the family was disappearing. But I understood something now. She hadn't defined me. Her words had only revealed how she saw me. I was never a burden. I was a woman who had survived a loss, a wife who had built a life, a mother who had given everything she could, and a person who still deserved dignity. I smiled, the same smile Amanda had once misunderstood. The smile that had begun as a quiet response to cruelty had become something else. It had become my reminder that I didn't need to fight every battle loudly. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is stay calm, protect herself, walk away from manipulation, and rebuild her life on her own terms. Frank's old chair sat beside me. I touched the armrest. I made it home, I whispered. The evening breeze moved through the roses, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace. Not because my family was perfect. It wasn't. Not because the past had disappeared. It hadn't. But because I had stopped measuring my worth by how other people treated me. I knew who I was. I knew what I had built. And I knew that no one could make me feel like a burden unless I allowed their words to become my truth. I never did. And I never would again. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the people we expected to protect us. When that happens, it is easy to believe their words. If someone calls you a burden, you may begin questioning your value. If someone treats your kindness like an obligation, you may start believing that you owe them more than you truly do. but your worth does not disappear because someone fails to appreciate it. Cheryl learned that protecting yourself is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. Saying no does not mean you love your family less. Sometimes saying no is exactly what allows love to survive. She also learned that forgiveness does not require forgetting. You can forgive someone while still keeping boundaries. You can wish someone well without giving them access to your home, your money, or your peace. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: never let someone convince you that you are powerless simply because you are getting older. Age can bring wisdom, experience can bring strength, and a lifetime of surviving difficult moments can give you something that money cannot buy: the ability to recognize your own worth. If you've ever been treated like a burden by someone you loved, I hope Cheryl's story reminded you that you are not alone. Your life still matters. Your voice still matters. Your choices still matter. And you are allowed to protect the life you worked so hard to build. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Amanda, or would you have walked away for good? And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I would truly love to know how far this story has traveled. If you believe that families should be built on love, respect, and honesty, please subscribe and stay with me for more stories about strength, family, betrayal, forgiveness, and second chances. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are never a burden simply because someone else has forgotten your worth.